Hello, everyone. I am very excited to kick off the webinar here. I am joined by Alex Levin, co-founder and CEO of Regal. We are going to be discussing strategies for proactive customer engagement to maximize outbound sales. Alex is going to share some insights on customer engagement, what customers want out of interactions, and how we can treat them like royalty, which I think is very exciting. So yeah, excited to kick off here. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks, Brooke. So just, 2 minutes on my background. I come from the contact center world. I've run sort of small and very large contact centers, used sort of every software that you might imagine that's out there. And ultimately, I think the reason I'm standing here today is because, everything I was taught was kind of wrong. When I was introduced to the contact center, I was told, really, you're a cost center, reduce the interactions with the customers as much as possible, eliminate them, deflect the interactions as possible, and, basically, keep the customer, away with a 10-foot pole. And the more time I spent in contact centers, the more I realized that led to bad outcomes, both for the customers and for the brand. Ultimately, like there are certainly interactions that should be self-serve, that should be simpler, but that sort of effort to reduce interactions should be coupled with an effort to increase proactive engagement of customers when you think there's opportunities to drive better outcomes for that customer or more revenue for the business. And so that's the piece that's often missing in contact centers. That's why we ultimately started Regal, to help companies with that piece, and that's why I'm here today. So let's talk a little bit about the bad news, so to speak. Largely, if I go and talk to companies and explain this point that contact centers don't only have to be call centers, they can also be revenue centers. They go, great, sign me up. How do I do it? They kind of understand that it would be a good thing. The bad news today is most brands are not thinking through, how do you get customer opt-in? Who should you be reaching out to? They're having trouble, getting customers to answer, even if they do one-off things. Even on the call, if a customer answers, they don't know what to say with the customer. They don't have any platforms for testing and learning like marketing does. Right? Marketing is great at this, but they've got lots of special tools for going and doing customer outreach. And ultimately, it means missed opportunities, with these customers. What I sort of encourage people to understand is that the reason why they're struggling is not because customers don't want to talk to them. The number one thing I hear from brands is, oh, customers don't want to talk to me on the phone. Customers don't want this. It's not true. We go and survey customers all the time, and particularly when it's something more important. So think of a more considered purchase or a more emotional purchase, whether that be in financial services, healthcare, education, local services, or even high-end retail. Customers raise their hand. 65% say, I want to talk with the brand. They actually want to. So the gap is not that customers don't want to engage with the brand. The gap is in other areas that are causing these problems where customers are not answering, not engaging, not doing things. And I usually show people this chart pretty early, and it gets them excited, which is I was always taught in the contact center world, legacy contact center world, that you want to be in this bottom right. And most brands are here. I was taught the goal is, even if you're going to do things that are nice for the customer, be sort of very efficient, do it the same for everybody, because that's going to be a very great way to run your contact center. It's going to be easy, and you're going to be as efficient as possible. And what I learned, from working with marketers and working with people who are really great at this is that's wrong. You don't want to be in this bottom right quadrant. The great brands are in this top right. What they're doing is figuring out what they know about the customer to figure out how they're going to make that person feel special. One line I sometimes use is, how do you treat millions of customers like one in a million? And really that means, doing what a small business owner might do, right? Figuring out who the customer is, what they want, what they need, and going above and beyond for them to turn them into a lifetime customer, happy customer. It's something that, really all contact centers should aspire to. And so that's a big shift. So instead of aspiring to treating everybody the same, how do you aspire to treating everybody differently and treating them in the right way for that specific customer? When we sort of look at what's going on in this general market, I'd say, it's not that the market is completely oblivious to this. So Gartner, coming out with their annual contact center report, the number one request from brands was, I need better technology to be able to do this. So ultimately, my conclusion has been, it's not that contact center management is ignorant of the need to better personalize what they're doing. It's not that contact center management doesn't want the contact center to be a revenue generator. It's that they don't have the tools necessary to go and do it. And so the big message I leave people with is you need to have the right data strategy, the right technology strategy to be able to go out there and proactively engage more people to create what we call these fast, frictionless, human experiences and go and generate better experiences for a customer. And I'll give some examples in a little bit. Um, the tools that you need, if you're thinking about, okay, I have general contact center software, I have what it takes to go and deflect and reduce inbound. What tools do I need to be able to go and actually have the right data strategy and the right outcomes for customers? I'd highlight these three as core ones. One is you need the ability to have personalized customer journeys, and that's two pieces. That's one, listening to all the first-party customer data, similar to what marketing does. What did they do on your website? What did they say in the last conversation? So that you can build a unified customer profile. And then having automation that allows you to figure out, what customer you're reaching out to in what channel with what message, and then doing A/B testing to see what's working. So that idea, which we call Journey Builder, is actually a very powerful one that does not exist in most contact center software because it was never part of what contact centers were supposed to do. But it's critical to have it if you want to start doing this more proactive engagement. Two is, we think about how do you build super agents? And so an agent by themselves can't get on a call and know what to do to make that specific customer happy, to know what to do differently to make that customer feel special. There's no way because they don't have the information. You have to give them the tools to be able to tell them, well, the last time you were talking with this customer, they were interested in an SUV, not a sedan. So make sure you talk about an SUV. Or, when they were on the website and they went through, the problem that they had is they're trying to fund a new bank account online, but their old bank account failed in sending the money over. So you need to help them with that piece. So giving the agents the tools they need to be able to have the right context, the right next best action is the only way that they're going to be able to reach millions of customers, like 1 in a million. And this is, often these days using generative AI as well. But a big part of it, again, is it starts with having customer data in your contact center tool, which is not the legacy way. And then the third piece now, which we're starting to emphasize more with our customers, is that we believe 90% of contact interactions will be automated in 10 years. And when I say automated, I don't mean self-serve. I mean that AI agents are going to take a lot of them. And AI agents actually are this really cool sort of opportunity where you're going to have higher quality interactions at a more affordable price. So instead of, the agent who's having trouble figuring out what that customer has done, an AI agent will have access to all of their data, be available 24/7 to that customer, and be there to help them with exactly what they need. So you'll still always need managers and humans to be overseeing what's going on and setting up your programs and improving on them. And so there'll be critical human roles in contact centers. But the availability of AI agents will allow you to do many more sort of the above and beyond things that contact centers couldn't do before because they were considered too expensive or too hard to do. So, to what I said before, your data and technology strategy will dictate your customer outcomes. If you're not investing in these areas, you're going to be behind when it comes a year from now, and your competitors are already doing these things and winning more customers for life. So if I shift to some customer examples, just to give you some idea of how this works, to what I said, we work across a lot of industries, but one might be in a financial service industry like insurance, like AAA, where they have a large number of members, and those members sometimes are getting into trouble and need to make sure that they can reach AAA, but then AAA needs to make sure they can reach them back. And then if that issue gets solved and the customer is helped, AAA can often reach back out and make sure that that customer is set up for success in the future, either with different products from AAA or to make sure that they're on the right plan. So that whole motion is very complicated if you don't have the right tools. And so the ability for Regal to make sure we know as much as possible about that customer, that we're reaching out in the right time with the right branding in the call, that we're reaching out in the right channel with the right message, leads to much better lift in answer rate as well in outcomes for that customer. If I use another example in healthcare, like Ro, which is often known as Roman, that brand, is constantly trying to figure out how they're improving the healthcare for their customers. So even if you're signed up as a customer, what they're doing is looking at all the information that they have on you and deciding when to reach out and make sure that you're getting a new prescription or getting a different drug or not, having an issue with a drug interaction. They're often suggesting other products that might be relevant for you. So instead of sort of a situation where you as the customer constantly have to be looking out for your own healthcare, Ro can proactively make sure they're looking out for your healthcare. The last example I wanted to give was one in Kin. I specifically wanted to call this one out because it's an interesting one. It's a company that has a pretty large contact center. About half of them are doing customer service, half of them are doing outbound, a variety of kinds. And it's one where they've always thought about contact center as customer service first. And when they did that, the tools they bought were customer service tools that were great at deflection and not good at outbound, not good at, claims and sales and outreach and collections and the other pieces of their team. And as a result, it was fine for, support, but it was terrible for those other teams. And so part of the big transition was to say, look, everybody, including Regal, has the tools that are necessary to be able to do basic inbound support. That has become commoditized. So as a team, Kin decided to look at what are the best tools for a proactive outreach? What are the tools that are going to lead to having the highest customer value over time? And that shift has ultimately led them to rethink how they were evaluating their contact center software to choose a tool like Regal that was the best for this proactive customer engagement and had things like the journey builder and the ability to create super agents, the ability to have AI agents, rather than only looking for legacy CCaaS tools. So again, the result for them was really great, increasing the answer rate, increasing the actual percentage of customers that were resulting in getting insurance. And so we really love to see that. So that's why, I think we're here today is, making people think, not just about could we become a revenue center, but tactically to do it, what data and technology strategy do we need to change to get there? So I think from here, Brooke had a couple questions that she wanted to ask.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Alex, for sharing all of that because you shared so much great insight. I love you talking about proactive experiences. I think from our own research, that's really what customers are looking for. And that's kind of the next step in building that exceptional customer experience. And like you said, customers still really want access to your brand. So giving them that instant access and being more proactive with it, I think is really helpful. I also love the idea of building super agents because I know from our latest market study, we found that connecting with a live person or not being able to connect with a live person was actually the #1 challenge in 2024 for customers. So having access to not only an amazing self-service experience, but also being able to instantly access agents who know what they're talking about and are going to deliver such an exceptional experience is really exciting for customers. So I wanted to dig a little bit deeper because you shared so much great insight and dig a little bit deeper to understand, from your perspective, what's going on in the industry and why this is so important right now. So my first question is about trust, because I think securing trust is really essential for outbound communication. And, we're at a time where customers are a little bit more skeptical about interactions. So how can organizations really bolster trust and enhance connections with their customers?
Yeah, look, the start is what you're saying is understanding you have a problem. Most brands, if they're doing outbound at all, they're just sort of using an old school dialer, putting numbers in the dialer, calling people X times for Y days, and whoever answers, and like kind of a hope and a dream. And that's not a great strategy. So admitting you have a problem is a good first step. If you're not doing outbound calling because you're worried about the reputational impact, or you are doing outbound calling and you're having reputational impact, start thinking about how to build trust. So I think the key to it is, pretend you are in the customer's shoes, right? Customers really value somebody going out of their way to reach out to them. So like if you were, walking into a dealership and they go, oh my God, I know you're looking at a red SUV. You go, oh wow, these guys really on top of their stuff. But if you walk into a dealership and they go, who are you again? Like it's going to be a bad experience. So outbound is the same, right? If you're, sort of somebody who knows nothing about the customer and you're dialing outbound saying, hey, want Medicare Advantage? That's going to be really hard. But if you're Roman and you know everything about that customer and their health history and what drugs they're taking, and you're reaching out and saying, please don't take this other drug your doctor just prescribed you because it might have a bad drug interaction. You're going to be sent to the hospital. Let's go and schedule a doctor's appointment right now to find the right drug for you. Oh my goodness. Like that's something that is huge value to the customer. And even within that interaction, should you be doing on text? Should you be calling them? What time should you be doing at it? Should you be branding the call so they know it's you and it knows something important? Like those are things that are going to help. So I think, again, it's not a challenge of do do contact centers understand they need to build trust? The problem is their current tools don't allow them to do that stuff. So as simple as saying, hey, I want an experience if I'm Roman where if this happens, let's trigger call instantly. Let's have it be branded. Let's leave them a voicemail if they don't answer that's specific to them. Then afterwards, let's send them a text message explaining why we did this. If they call back, have it routed to the same agent that called them or another agent with the same knowledge and script that that person had, and then make sure based on the outcome of that call, which we can use conversation intelligence to know, so we don't need to have manual disposition, we automatically update our system internally to either know that they have correctly updated the drug they're on, or if not, that we need to make sure that we're staying on top of this because they might have a drug interaction. That's the holy grail, as one CEO put it to me. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, such a great example because it is such a comprehensive customer experience. They get access to so many different touch points and it feels really intentional and proactive, which I think is honestly what customers are really looking for today. So,
Yeah, I often use the example of like a club, like, or a nice restaurant 100 years ago. Like you'd walk in and they go, "Oh, Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith, like here's your favorite table. Here's the drink you want. We're gonna play the music you want. We're gonna tell the chef that you're like." That's what people want to feel. And 100 years ago, it was very expensive to do that, and you could only get it if you're spending the most money. The beauty of technology is that it should lower the cost to give people that incredible experience. So intuitively people believe, hey, if I want that experience, I have to pay a lot for a restaurant, or I need to pay a private chef. But think about what Netflix did. Instead of having to pay lots and lots of money to have access to every movie in the world, you could use technology to give everybody access to exactly what was right for them. So same should be true in contact centers. Don't go and treat everybody the same. Use technology and data to go give each person a really superior experience.
definitely. And you're bringing me really well to my next question, which is about personalization, which is pretty much what you just talked about here. Customers, like you said, they expect companies to recognize their intention and leverage that context to really tailor the interaction and the conversation. So, how can companies actually execute on this? How can they better personalize customer touch points and really ensure that those experiences, like you said, are productive?
Yeah. So if you think of the history of contact center versus marketing, it's a good place to start. Contact centers, the software thought of themselves as telephony software or even email software, but as the connective pipes and as efficiency for the agents. They literally did not have customer data in those systems, and they didn't even use customer data if they had it to route because it wasn't how those systems were built. On the other hand, marketing teams evolved saying, well, how do we use everything we know about the customer to make sure we're presenting them with the right information at the right moment? And so those tools evolve very differently. It's a shame because all the tools the marketers have need to be used in the contact center and enhance that experience. So the most sophisticated large companies have started. So I tried when I was on my own, trying to build my own software, using engineers to do in contact centers what the software wouldn't allow us. And it was very hard because the software was very brittle and it made it very difficult. Ultimately, we started Regal because we wanted to give people a contact center platform that had all the features that marketing teams had so that contact centers could go and do all the amazing things that marketers could do. So when we talk about personalization and marketing, they go, I get it, it's obvious. When we talk about it in the contact center, it's still relatively new because they don't have access to all the customer data they need. They're not taking advantage of everything that happens in the conversations, and they don't have the technology necessary. And again, I don't blame the people that are in the contact center. I blame the software that they're using. And if anything, like sometimes you could say that the incentives that executives are putting on the contact center are wrong, right? If you keep telling your contact center, reduce costs, reduce costs, reduce costs, they're not incentivized to go figure out how to go use new tools to drive more revenue for the business. But as executives, as a CEO of a big online bank or of a big, online education company, you should be pushing your contact center not just to reduce cost on the simple interactions, which is a good thing, but also on the other side, you should be saying, how do we go and create new revenue using personalization, using, sort of phone as a channel. And the eye-opening metric that I often explain to people is if there is a customer that is really in market for your, I don't know, let's say your new life insurance product, they're in market and they're about to buy, and you email them, I don't know, 3% click on that email. If you text them, maybe 10% click on an email. A traditional spam call with unbranded, lots of times, maybe 10% answer. On Regal, when you're using the right tools to build trust, you can get up to 30% of people to answer that call. So that means as a marketer or as a contact center leader, if you have very in-market people, you can get a third of them to engage with you on phone versus 3% on email. So which is the channel that's spam? It's not the phone, it's the email. So stop using email when actually these higher touch channels are going to result in better outcomes. Yes, it's more expensive to talk to somebody on the phone, but if the outcome is going to be much better for you and the customer, it's well worth it.
Yeah, no, I so agree. And when you put it like that, it makes so much sense. And everyone I talk to pretty much, I feel like in this space right now is still so focused on that human element and that human touch. So it is such a vital and critical channel for customers. So yeah, it's definitely like you said, it seems like it's part of, the future and how we're building out our experiences today. So we've talked a lot about proactive experiences and going that next step for the customer and predicting their needs, but that's not always easy for organizations. It can be a challenge. So can you talk me through some of the key challenges right now that are really preventing organizations from offering that more proactive approach that we talked about?
Yeah, I'd say culturally and from a technology standpoint, one of the big gaps is sort of an iterative A/B testing approach. When you have organizations that don't have the cultural desire or the tools to go do A/B testing, it's really hard to optimize all this stuff because it's not easy to go do a project and say, let's go do data science and figure out what's the best possible way. That's a very hard project. A much easier project is saying, here's our current way. Let's try this new way, which we think is a little bit better based on a little research we've done. Like, let's call them in the evening at 4 p.m. as opposed to in the morning at 10 a.m. Or let's text them after every time we call. And let's A/B test those two and see which one results in a better outcome. Oh, the text results in a better outcome if you combine with the call. Great. Let's stop doing just the call. Let's start doing all that. Now let's come up with a new hypothesis. Okay, the new hypothesis is let's make sure that we, every time we call them, we then afterwards, follow up with a voicemail that is personalized for them. What is that outcome? So by iteratively approaching the problem, it's much easier to get to an outcome. There's very few companies that successfully come to the right answer just by going and doing tons of data science and machine learning in the background. The data can be used to help you decide what experiments to do, but then you need a tool that can allow you to quickly and iteratively decide on the next step. So when I was using the legacy contact center platforms, the problem is you want to make a change. You go to engineering, go to professional services, and they say, first of all, there is no A/B testing in Genesis 959. It doesn't exist as a concept. And second, okay, it's 2 weeks of work to go set that thing up. So is it worth, the 2 weeks of somebody's time to go do it? Well, I don't know if it's going to result in a better outcome. That's why it's called a test. So with Regal, what's nice is, first of all, just the ease of doing this means that sort of user, that manager can come into Regal and set up an A/B test and say, hey, let's just try this. They can have a very small percentage of the population do it. They can see the data on the outcome, and they can then just move forward. So they don't have to be in this position where they're constantly, putting huge amounts of resources in testing. And I think that's the big shift, is that iterative mindset. For companies that already have it, great, you're going to do really well. For companies that don't yet, I think largely, again, it's not because the people don't have the desire, it's because they're so used to contact center tools that don't even understand what A/B testing is. If they want to test, it's like, hey, 1 month we'll do one thing, the next month we'll do another, which is not a great test because a lot of things change. Or everyone on that side of the floor do one thing, everyone on that side do the other, which is, again, then hard to track which calls are resulting in which outcome. So it's quite difficult to do A/B testing in the contact center environment in legacy contact center tools.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, it seems very daunting. So having access to iterate, like you said, and improve more quickly, I'm sure is incredibly helpful for people. So I want to go back to that human element, and talk a little bit about your super agents that you mentioned earlier. So how can companies better prepare their teams to deliver those really highly engaging and empathetic experiences to become those super agents, like you mentioned? And how can we ensure that we are still preserving that human-centered approach?
Yeah. So a couple things. First of all, it's what I said. Despite what you may believe, like when you go and survey customers, they want to talk with you. They like the human touch. Even the youth, as widely that is on their texting, like they still actually, when it's important enough to them, they want to go to school and they can't visit the school and they're trying to find out some information. They don't want to text somebody. They want to get on the phone with the admissions officer and find out, what is really going to happen. So first of all, voice is important as a channel. I think whether it's human or AI is not the importance. Is it going to be somebody that's empathetic, has all the information, helps you through it quickly, is always available? And as you go through a list of things, you go, well, actually, sooner rather than later, AI will probably be better at that than a human. So it's voice that's important to me, not the human part. In terms of how you actually go and do it better, the problems are sort of eternally known problems, right? So with trying to do more voice when it's human agents, it's how do you onboard and train these people effectively, know all the information and knowledge that they're going to have? How do you make sure you're giving them the right information about that customer so they know what action to take with that customer? How do you go and after the fact, go and do QA of all of these calls to make sure they're doing it right, and then you can coach them. And so even with humans, the technology's gotten much better on all of those. Like again, with Regal now, or you can start figuring out when you're calling out and what you're saying in advance. We automatically transcribe all the calls and allow you, if you want, to have AI automatically score all the calls instead of a manager listening to one call a week. The AI can listen to all of them and give you much better feedback on whether the agent is doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I think with humans, the advent of sort of more data centric tools and generative AI tools definitely allows you to make them these super agents. And I think it's just about continuing to march in that direction. When I talk with big brands, I'd say their number one problem is, okay, I get it. I need to do that. How do I get all my data in a format where I can do that? Like I have 18 different disparate systems. I need to like figure out how to get all that data in one place so I have a unified view of the customer. And then how do I get that data into generative AI so that the generative AI can do something to help the agent, even if it's an agent assist? And then how do I make sure that we can automatically take actions on behalf of what happens in the call so the after call work goes down? So that's kind of the super agent direction. But the good news is like the current technology really is helping. To what I said, there's also the AI agents, which I look at as like super agents, right? They are always available. They're omnipotent. They really can do things that humans can't, and it's quickly getting better. So today, I'd say we start with, what are the easy, repeatable use cases that you don't need humans to do? In voice, give those to the AI agent. And over time, we'll start taking more and more use cases. But I really do believe that not only gives customers a better experience, it empowers the humans in the contact centers to do what they should be doing, which is not doing a rote interaction, but actually designing what the interaction should be, setting up the next test, coaching the AI agents. So there's a funny thing, like AI agents are not like software. They actually are much more like contact center agents. So the people who I think are best suited to be training AI agents are not software developers who think of it just a software that they write, test once, and put in the wild, but contact center managers who are very used to the idea of onboarding people, training them, giving them feedback, and that iterative process that results in a better outcome. So I think you're going to see AI agents perform very well in the contact center with human oversight.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really exciting time, especially thinking about the dynamic of AI agents and human agents. And yeah, I mean, we've talked about the evolving role of the agent for a long time now, and it seems like that definitely could be the next step. And seeing them take on that role is exciting to me. So, any final thoughts or key takeaways that you would like to share with the audience before we wrap up here, Alex?
Yeah, I would just say again, the sort of limitation that most people are seeing is in technology, and don't let that limit what you think is possible. So open your mind. Say, how could I drive revenue with my contact center? How could I do more outbound? How could I make it something customers love, not hate? And thus, what are the tools that I need to go and get that? And it may not be the legacy tools like Five9, Nice, and Genesis because they weren't built for that purpose. And if you want to talk with us, about either building your own system from scratch or obviously using an off-the-shelf one like Regal, we're always available. Email us at hello@regal.com. Sorry, hello@regal.io. Or you can always go to regal.io and just look around. We're ultimately there as a resource. Our goal is to have as many businesses as possible start treating their customers better, do sort of better and resulting in better customer outcomes. That's what makes us happy. Like, that's why we're here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Alex, for joining us and sharing your insight. These conversations are always so important, and I know our audience really enjoys hearing from you. So thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you for having me.